Are you tired of losing chess games that you should be winning? Let's fix that today. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. These are common mistakes that we all do in chess. We all make them, but repeating them is optional. And we are going to see what mistakes there are and how you can avoid them. Let's go to an analysis board. Welcome to the channel. I hope you will enjoy the content. We've got 8 bullet points to go through. We'll summarize them very shortly right now, and then an optional bonus tip. So, the 8 points that I'm talking about today: not controlling the center, moving the same piece twice in the opening, ignoring king safety, hanging pieces. It's become a meme, but how many times do we have to Botez gambit the queen? Tunnel vision, trading pieces unnecessarily, poor time management, and not studying endgames. Some of them a little bit more niche than the others. We'll start off, obviously, with not controlling the center. It is the first golden rule and principle you are taught. Why is it important? Well, let's say we're playing with the black pieces, right? White plays e4. We play e6. Maybe looking for a French, so they play d4. And then you do this. And they continue to develop, and you just, continue to do some of your stuff here, right? And, I've seen people play like this, right? So they continue to develop, and, they get all their pieces out, and before you know it, hang a bishop. Hold on, just a second. We're going to ignore that happened, right? So the bishop goes here. Obviously, we don't hang it. Like, look at this, right? Black has developed their pieces. They're worse. Not a piece has been traded because white has got so much free reign in the center. It's absolutely ridiculous. Your pieces get squished. Now, I'm not saying you always have to start with the central pawn, right? If we go all the way back, if white plays d4, you are always going to be okay if you want to play like King's Indian, right? If you want to play something that looks like this, where yes, you don't have space, but you're going to be fighting back actively, and you're going to be following up with e5 or c5, as is typical in some of the French and the Caracan. That's fine. That's a proper opening. But to go back to what we had earlier, with this is not good enough. So you need to control the center. You need to have a way to fight for it. Even if you're not putting pawns in it, you're going to fight in like the style of the King's Indian or the Grunfeld, or it's going to be a later strike, or you control with the Sicilian. You must control the center. Giving it all up to your opponent, you are winning games by the skin of your pants. Next point, moving the same piece twice in the opening. Now, the normal caveat does apply. If, for example, it is part of the opening to use that piece. For example, in the Caracan, we get c6. And later, in a lot of lines, we get this move, c5. That is a piece that has moved twice before I've developed everything else. But it's part of the opening theory. If the theory calls for it, that's fine. If you know what you're doing, that's fine. But for example, if we flip the board, let's say we get e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, knight to c3, and something like d6. There is no need here to bring the other knight forward. No need. It's fine. It's gone a good square, but you see the slight advantage that white had has disappeared because there's no need to do it. You've developed a knight. It's not under attack. It's not being pinned. There's no reason for you to move it. You're not attacking anything. You're not gaining any advantage. So develop the rest of the pieces and castle. If you can develop all your pieces and castle, do that before moving a piece twice. Unless, of course, as said earlier, the opening theory calls for it, or you're gaining something tangible. Like often when the queen comes out, the knight can come in here because you look for the fork in this particular type of case. Okay, let's go back. All the way back, and we'll flip the board. So that's the first 2 points. The third one is ignoring king safety, and this is why I've got these particular names up. If you watched my video on my first chess tournament, you may recall this game. And I ignored king safety. I made this mistake. Right? We got all the way here, queen c7, and notice queen d7, knight jumped back, I kicked out the bishop, I brought my knight, I brought the bishop, I looked for trades, and here I thought, oh, I'm going to win a pawn. I won the pawn in the center of the board. And you can see it's winning for black. Knight takes f5. Now what do I need to take with here? I need to take with the pawn, I took with the knight, because I thought it was the better move. I ignored my king safety and got hit with this. It's not an attack on my king, but it pins my queen to my king, and I lose the queen. And I probably would have lost the game from this position. In fact, I did, but not because of this. I did manage to win the queen back. Ignoring king safety. Ladies and gentlemen, how do you evaluate a position? Well, first is material. Second is king safety. You can have much more material if your king is unbelievably weak. Look at the Paul Morphy opera game. He only had 2 pieces left by the end of it. He was down on material, but the king never left the center of the board. My king is not castled here. I should have just accepted the damage structure because I would have had a knight there that was protecting the bishop. I didn't. I ignored the fact that my king was still in the center, and I had opened up this light squared diagonal, and it was my own problem. And we do this all the time. Sometimes this is a little bit more, maybe more a niche one, but we do this all the time. The next is tunnel vision. And we go later to this very game. I'm going to continue to click forward. Tunnel vision, right? So I had to fight back, right? I had to fight back in this game. So we got here. And I was a little bit of tunnel vision. I was looking to try and win the queen, right? So I brought all my pieces as best as I could. They sacrificed. I won the queen back. Here. And what do I need to avoid now, right? I need to avoid a fork, losing one of my rooks. I need to avoid losing one of my rooks, right? So we kick out the knight, and what do I do here? Play rook here. Because I'm like, oh, it's the endgame. I'm up material, I should trade. We do trade. And then he hits me with knight c8 check. What was I trying to avoid the whole time I got to this endgame with the 2 rooks? Don't hang a rook due to a knight fork. Just don't get forked. Here, I can cover this very easily with a simple move like rook c7. Rook c7, I attack the pawn. That's weak. So if he even plays like rook, if he plays like rook c1, I can take. This fork is covered. That is covered. We're fine. But I tunnel visioned because I was like, well, if I trade rooks, this game is completely winning. And I forgot about the knight fork. I lost the knight and went on to lose the game. Boom, 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 boom. Went on to lose the game. Right, so let's go back to the first move. The next point, point 6, trading pieces unnecessarily. Why do we trade pieces? I could make a whole video about why we should trade pieces. Well, sometimes it's because the opening calls for it. You are playing with a particular pawn structure, or you're playing with a particular type of position, and you need to trade certain pieces. For example, in the Sicilian, after e4, c5, white will play knight to f3, we'll get like e6, d4, and we trade these pawns, right? And then you might challenge. White does not take this. Almost never. You leave your knight in the center of the board because it's strong there. So you can play like c5 or c4. And then we'll get like, bishop to c5. And, knight to c3. Bishop hung the knight. But, we'll get like this. And now we may consider trading because it would open up an attack. So you maybe get like queen b6. Okay, this is not quite the perfect position. But what do we do all the time when we don't know what we're doing? We will play e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and then a scotch, right? So we trade the pawns because that's how the scotch goes. And then we take here, right? And then we want to trade the queens. And white's like, all right, I'll trade the queens. And then this pawn's hanging, right? So we defend it. Okay. Now we play d6. No, we don't play d6. We play like d5. And we trade these pieces too. And then we get here. And we challenge the knight, and we pin the knight. And they break the pin, so we trade. And we trade, and we trade, and we go here. And then you castle, and then I castle. Why have we got to this position? Why? Why did we have to trade everything? I take you back. This is the Scotch, right? There is no need for black to take this knight. Why? Because you just activate the queen. You just activate the queen. Now the queen's active, and you've got no way of challenging it. So we bring the queen to f6. What should white do? I mean, trading queens is not bad. Maybe you play like e5. Or you play, queen c3 to trade on your terms or something like that. Or bishop to e3. And then if they take your queen, you're defended and you get active. Why would you do this and give now black an active piece and a target on the knight? And now knight to c3 and then the pin. Why would you do that? Okay? And now the thing's pinned, so we play like bishop to d2. And then we take, because we can. Why? Why are we taking? Understand why we're trading pieces. Understand why you would go about trading pieces. That is the biggest thing I can talk about. Because sometimes you're in like the French, for example. It is known that the light squared bishop full black in the French is particularly bad. It's stuck on the light squares, it can't get out. So trading it off is not bad. If your opponent has active pieces or a better piece than you and you want to trade that off, that's fine. Don't trade your active pieces for their worst pieces. They're trying to do that to you, so don't let them, and don't give it to them voluntarily. Understanding why we're trading. It's a little bit niche, it's a little bit difficult to just talk through, but don't just trade because you're going to beeline for an endgame, and that'll tie into point 8 a bit later. You're going into an endgame, maybe you don't fully understand how to play, and then it's anybody's game. If you're going to trade down into something that's winning because you're up material, or trade down into an endgame that you know how to play. And that takes us then to point 7. We can reset the board for this point. Reset the whole board. Right? Poor time management. I'm guilty of this. I'm not going to hold my hands up. I'm guilty of it. What do you think of when poor time management? You play too fast or you play too slow? Playing too fast means you're not thinking everything through. That rook blunder I showed you earlier, where I tunnel vision because it's like I'm trading, I'd made that decision in like 5 seconds. In an over-the-board game where I had an hour on the clock. I could have spent a couple more minutes. Look, if you go into the video, I give a bit more context to that blunder, but play too fast, right? And you don't think everything through, and then you blunder the game. Or there's the opposite. You play too slow. I don't have the game for you, but in my second tournament, like second round, player guy, we've got 55 minutes on the clock plus 5 seconds bonus time. He flags on move 30, move 40. I have 35 minutes left on the clock because I've used about 20 minutes. He used the whole hour and lost on time. In an equal position, in a position he was worse. I'm not saying if he played faster, it would have been better, but you cannot be that much down on time. If you are playing a 10-minute game, do not be down more than 2 or 3 minutes on the clock. 10 minutes with no bonus time. Because the thing is, right, if you come down to a position where you've got a minute and they've got 4 or 5 minutes, you are bust. Because they have enough time on the clock to think and play, and you will flag. If you've got bonus time, it's slightly different. You can afford to be down a little bit more on the clock because you've got that bonus time. But they're also getting bonus time. So you've got to keep close to your opponent's clock. Not the same, not more. If you're playing faster than your opponent, you're in the position where you've got 5 minutes versus 1 minute. It is your responsibility to use that time to not blunder, to put them under pressure. That is your responsibility. You are responsible for your clock and keeping it in tune with your opponent. If you are better and you have more time, there is no excuse to make a rash decision and to blunder the game. If you are down on time, even if in a better position, That's a bit more difficult because you don't have the time, but you've got the better position. So you need to know how to play it and make intuitive, quick decisions that don't lose the advantage and don't lose the game. Right. Point 8. Not studying endgames. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not even taking a joke. I'm going to open a new analysis board. So the board's going to break for a slight second. We're going to set up a position. I have recently done 2 endgame videos on the channel. One about rook endgames, one about pawn endgames. Is your responsibility, if you are going into an endgame, to know it. I've set this up the wrong way around. You go here, here, here. What is the winning move for white in this position? The winning move for white. You can see white's winning. The engine just took a second. What's the winning move for white? This is a basic king and pawn endgame. I'm not expecting you to memorize insane endgames or go into insane depth. But chess can be simplified really far down to king and pawn. This is a winning endgame for white. What is the winning move? There's only one. The pawn can't move. So you're down to the king moves, right? You're down to all these king moves. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you, right? Going backwards doesn't make sense. Going sideways doesn't make sense. So we've got one of 3 choices. Those of you who may have watched that video or know about king and pawn endgames, you will know that you need to go here. And this is winning. In fact, it's winning if it's black to move now. But it's still set to white to move. You know this is winning. Because you'll push the pawn, you will get opposition. Good. What about this? What about this position? What about this position? Who's winning here? White to move. The rook should be here. White to move. You go this way. Can't give a check. So let's say we go here. Pin the pawn. King goes here. Something like that. Build the bridge. Losing the position. This isn't quite it, but you take my point. Do you know how to win these endgames? Do you know that pawns on the A and H files are typically drawn if the king can get to the corner? Do you know about opposite colored bishop endgames? Why are they drawish? How is the drawing mechanism found? Hey, in this position. Opposite colored bishops, right? One pawn. It's a draw. Why? Because this pawn can't go into a dark square. The king and this bishop will loiter on the dark squares, and there's no way around it. This bishop can only fight on the light squares. This bishop blockades on the dark squares. Even if you add more pawns, it's a draw. Do you know this? Do you know some of the drawing principles? There are very basic endgames that do not take long to learn. Finally, I did a video yesterday or the day before. No, yesterday I launched the podcast. The day before, how to study grandmaster games effectively. But this also comes in. Are you analyzing your games? And not only are you analyzing them properly? Or are you just clicking game review to see if you played a brilliant move? And if you didn't, you're clicking out. Are you analyzing them properly? What are you learning? What are you taking away from your games? Alright, if we, clear the board so that it makes time codes easier. What are you learning from your games? Not analyzing your games. Are you just clicking game review to check the brilliant moves? Is that what you're doing? You're checking. We can also turn off the board. Why are you analyzing your games? Break them down. Do them properly. See your mistakes as they happen. That's all I really have for you to say, really. You've got to analyze your games. You don't have to analyze every single one that you played. But analyzing a few will skyrocket your elo and stop you making the same mistakes twice. Stop making mistakes in the opening. Stop tunnel visioning. Stop compromising your king safety. Looking at your time management. Mistakes are a part of learning, but repeating them is optional. Focus on the basics, be mindful in every game, and your rating will improve. I promise.